Hello, RPG Limit Break. Welcome to, I believe this is like our 5th episode now of the podcast. Now that I think about it, it's really awesome. I'm kind of happy to realize that. I am Ghoul02. I'm going to be one of your two hosts for this session alongside my good friend Tiny Tim here. Tim, how you doing?
Hello there, folks. Hello, Ghoul. Yes, fantastic to be back again. Looking forward to today's chat. We have two fantastic people here to talk about. Well, what are we going to talk about today, Ghoul?
So we have TheElieson and MagiCoupleAltair. And we're going to be talking some Lufia 2 Ancient Cave. Ellie, Altair, how are y'all doing today?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. I have been looking forward to this for well over a week, but due to some blue mimics spawning on stairs, we got delayed. So it only gave me more time to get hyped up. Excited for today's podcast.
Yeah, they weren't bothering me too much just because my defense is cracked and so is my HP, but I did have to spend quite a few regains on Ellison there, so run a bit low on items, otherwise doing okay.
I mean, at least it was, a couple mimics and not a Dragon Con, in front of the...
Oh, God. My people.
That would have added weeks, plural, to the...
So, could have been worse. Yeah, so a little bit of behind-the-scenes knowledge for people. This was scheduled for about a week ago, and then just kind of some tech stuff kind of fell through, and we realized it would be better to do it this week, which is why we're all here with all these lovely people for y'all today. And yeah, so I guess to kind of get some back info on this and why we're kind of talking Ancient Cave, in January, on January 6th and 13th, we have an Ancient Cave tournament that'll be run by the community. I believe, Ellie, you're kind of almost in charge of that, I believe. And
I'm entirely in charge of it.
Entirely in charge. And we haven't had Ancient Cave in the main event of Limit Break since 2018, actually. We had a 3-person race back then. And I figured it's been a little while, maybe a little nice primer to kind of get people back into kind of that Lufia 2 spirit and one of the coolest SNES RPGs that maybe people don't know as much about. And kind of talk a bit about this really unique, interesting thing that Lufia 2 brings. So, I guess as a start, what is Lufia 2? Why is Lufia 2 a game that people should be interested in?
So if you've never played SNES RPGs or heard of any outside of the big winners like Final Fantasy 5 and 6 or 2 and 3, depending on wherever you're from, or Chrono Trigger or Earthbound or Legend of Zelda, there are so many good games on the SNES. One such RPG that got kind of overshadowed just due to the torrent of amazing RPGs was the Lufia series. Lufia was produced and put out by both Natsumi and Taito, and now they're owned by Square, so you're not likely to see continuations of those. But Lufia 1 and 2 are sort of based on like the Dragon Warrior style of gameplay, and while Lufia 1 is a bit aged in terms of how you can compare its gameplay to games like today, Lufia 2 is a fantastic representation of what makes SNES RPGs really fun to play, and still holds up even to this day. It's a decent JRPG. The story's a little bit standard, but they both unveiled a lot of features that were either fairly new at the time or quality of life adjustments that you just wouldn't normally see in gaming. And Lufia 2 specifically is known more for the Ancient Cave rather than the JRPG itself. So you absolutely have two fantastic games in one with the Lufia series, just in Lufia 2 alone. Great characterization, a decent enough story to hold your interest for a while, and a plot that have a few twists and turns which you would not see in gaming repeated until what I would say the PlayStation days with one of the Lufia games. I won't spoil that for those who haven't played it, but just let it be known that there is something to do with a girl in each game.
I mean, I was going to say, like, even like Lufia 2, you say it's relatively standard, but like, as somebody who most of my exposure to it was watching the speedrun of it way back at the very first Limit Break, I want to date myself a little bit here, but, they're watching that run being host of it. I'd never heard of the game before then, and I was, like, enthralled. The combination of, like, this really unique, almost like a Zelda-like, almost like a Metroidvania-style, gameplay as far as, like, moving around dungeons and the way the puzzle solving ends up happening with this, like, really solid JRPG combat. I think almost every game, if they could just steal IP and throw it in every other RPG, I would be A-okay with that. I love IP as a mechanic in the system. You want to explain what IP is for us a little bit, so people that might not know what it is?
So IP translates to Ikari points, and for those who don't know what Ikari means, it effectively translates to rage. It is what one could consider to be one of the early functions and versions of the limit break system, which you see very, very popularized in games like Final Fantasy VII, for instance, where you take enough damage, your HP gets low, suddenly you have access to these great new tools. In Lufia 2 specifically, your IP meter allows you to take abilities that are attached to weapons and use them in order to facilitate strong attacks or great recovery options or unique spells or any combination. And they're pretty much unique to most of the weaponry and armor and rings and accessories and such that you'll find over your adventure. If you die, you lose all of your IP gauge, so it's strategic to try to utilize it while you have it, especially for your squishier party members. But it's a constantly refillable resource that refills faster the more you are already beaten up when you're taking damage. So there's a bit of a strategy to trying to optimize your little meter fill as well. And this is an interesting take on the system that isn't touched upon in really any other game I can think of, where you get beat up and you kind of get yourself charged up to do some great big final blow attack that you can hold on to after being recovered back to full HP. It's usually you get beaten up and you get your one last hurrah, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's also how it like ties in with like the gear system in the game and how it makes different items and everything else like more impactful, which matters a lot for Ancient Cave, I believe, as well too. Where I believe like different weapons and stuff are almost favored in part due to that. So it's a very cool thing. But we're kind of putting the cart before the horse a bit. What is Ancient Cave? Why is Ancient Cave?
Just going to ask.
So Lufia 2 is a 100 floor sort of roguelike randomizer adventure, and attached to it is a DLC that is what you would consider to be a typical JRPG romp through a world where you meet various party members, characters, solve stories, and make people's days a little easier. The Ancient Cave itself is accessible through the main story mode of the game about halfway through, and it allows you to, like I said, dive through a 100 floor adventure and defeat a super boss at the bottom of it for bragging rights and a little certificate that says, "Congratulations, you did it," and not a whole lot else. The romp down is difficult, and you can access it in the main game. The game does feature a New Game Plus mode, and you can access it in the New Game Plus mode. If you beat the base game and then you beat New Game Plus, you unlock a mode called Gift Mode. Gift Mode is exclusively Ancient Cave access, and it lets you bring along party members and pets or capsule monsters, as the game referred to it as, that you normally wouldn't have access to. So you can pretty much come up with any party composition that you choose. You can go into it with a smaller than regular party composition if you so desire. And you start right there at the town, which is a huge time save versus even in the speed run, it takes, an hour and a half to get to that point, absolute minimum. So it's pretty cool that you can just get straight into it. And the unique features is that the Ancient Cave, again, is a roguelike, so every time you go through, it's going to be pretty different, but the super boss at the end is always the same, and it's only one. So along the romp, you find various items, spells, tools that can aid you in defeating and overcoming the challenges that the sort of Legend of Zelda style method of enemy engagement really functions, and where you can see the enemies on the map, only they move when you move. So the Ancient Cave itself is kind of like a big puzzle, where every time you get to a new floor, you see stairs, or you have to look for a flight of stairs that will take you down to the next floor. And in doing so, you have to open up a couple of chests and grab what you can, and either get into or avoid combat as strategically as possible by using your movement techniques to your advantage. Primarily in the speed run, you want to avoid as much combat as possible. So the puzzle really comes from strategically avoiding things that move and react based on how you move. And if you have to get into combat, you have people who, because you can customize your party to some extent, you can bring people like Decker, who my partner here, Altair, with the fabulous hair, is wearing, to tank and deal with the amount of damage that you can be sustaining. And some of the endgame guys that you have to deal with, you may not be able to take Decker in during your normal run through the campaign because you only have a limited time with him in your party. But again, in gift mode, you have access to him full time. So you have just great party combinations, great customization, great replayability, and the key items that you get along the run make it so that way you can even defeat the super boss at the end, which only gives you 3 turns to do it. in a turn-based style battle that is akin to your traditional Dragon Quest style of JRPG enemy battle that you probably are familiar with if you're in this podcast to begin with.
All right, and it's also like for the, like doesn't know or hasn't seen it, because I mean, obviously when we have it on the channel, we've got like some of the best in the world that play it. It's not very easy to actually clear Ancient Cave casually, even your first time. You guys want to talk a little bit like your first time clearing Ancient Cave and what led into that and how that ended up happening?
Altair probably has a much fonder memory. I'd like to hear his more than mine, because mine's so old.
I guess mine's definitely a little fresher, yeah. So for full disclosure, I'll out myself immediately here for the fun of it. Prior to finding the RPG Limit Break runs of the Ancient Cave speedrun, I had no idea this game existed. I didn't grow up with an SNES. I didn't have I played it off my friends. I was a moocher. And none of them were RPG people, so this game was not on my radar at all. So imagine my surprise when I heard that there was a game out there whose DLC you need to beat twice in order to play the main game. You never get away with that nowadays.
At least it's on cart DLC, you know. We didn't.
That's true.
You have to download it later.
It really, like, they don't say it. Lufia 2 is actually the gold edition that came out, you know. They made the DLC, that version. They just like skipped the step where they released the game without the DLC.
It's like if we got Kingdom Hearts Final Mix before we got base Kingdom Hearts.
Oh my god!
I think it's absolutely fascinating that this is a thing, right? That you obviously spend a lot of time, and we'll talk about it later on. Is that there's a big community around Ancient Cave, and it's fantastic that it's become its own thing. But anyway, I'll let you carry on.
We definitely have our memes, but yeah, it was. For me, it was honestly that Ancient Cave was the main game, because that was the thing that drew me in. That was the thing that I was interested in. This roguelike RPG, a very unique concept in a time where the most popular roguelikes were things like Slay the Spire and Gungeon and Rogue Legacy, more action style or card style than traditional RPG. But so my first clear came a couple of weeks in, like 10 to 15 runs into the game, and I was getting help in chat for the calculations by people in the community who saw, hey, there's a new runner, let's go show him a little support. And so I had Ellison.
New streamer. Get him.
Yeah, right. Take him out. He can't be allowed to place. So I was being lied to by no.
So you did this all with the help of the speedrunner community and the speedrunning resources that are available for Ancient Cave already.
Yeah.
So I never really
learned...
even almost did it casually in a way. Like
I
experiencing it.
Yeah, no, I learned the game entirely by going back and watching the old runs and seeing what they were talking about, and then using the resources that the community had put together that said, oh, here's the list of the weapons, here's the IPs that you're looking for, here's the, what floors you can get certain things, like, oh, you can skip these, you can skip chests on these floors, you want the chests on these floors, or these enemies are easy to kill, they'll give you something good, these enemies you avoid like the plague. It was great.
These are Kellys. These are the ones you want to kill at all times.
Yeah.
Avoid these ones.
Here are the cores. They run. Make sure you chase them because your life depends on them. But Ellison and Voodoofs and Critical, just a whole bunch of people that were up during my streams would... Oh, thank you for the follow, please. I'm sorry. Let me turn those alerts off because that's going to be a problem. A lot of people came in and showed their love and support, and they helped with the calculations and giving me advice on movement, trying their best to help me actually get through the run. And so my first clear, which was a little over 2 hours, not terrible for a first clear by any stretch of the imagination, it was less of an independent effort than it was a community effort. And I thought that was so cool and endearing that this became less of a how can I compete with everyone and more of a how can we get everyone's time improved? How can we get everyone to be better at the game? And that was the best. That's what kept me, honestly, more so than even the fun I was having with the game, was seeing just how encouraging and helpful everyone was, and knowing that, like, oh, when new runners come in, I can be, that person too, popping into streams, razzing at them, but also trying to give them, whatever support I can.
Yeah, very much a collaborative effort. Yeah, community driven. Yeah.
Oh, that's like
one
really
thing
awesome.
I really like about the Ancient Cave community is that there's not a lot of us. There really aren't too many of us that are active. There's maybe a good solid dozen or so that you'll see popping around from stream to stream. But a lot of us, when we see somebody streaming the Ancient Cave and it's a name that we don't recognize, we jump into the streams. My favorite thing to do is find people who are streaming the cave and say, hey, look, I want this person to complete it. I would love for them to be able to make it to the bottom, especially if they've never done it before, or maybe they haven't played the game since they were 12 and they're just coming back to it after a decade or two of just, oh, hey, look, I stumbled on this game. Nothing makes me happier more than trying to just give someone just the little bit of background knowledge, the tactical knowledge that they just may not have due to a lack of experience or lack of expertise or lack of availability to resources, and help them reach the end. When you get to the end, if you kept up with the game, there's a couple of tools that you need. One is Decker Blade, and two is just a handful of combination of other things. And if you have the Decker Blade, you can be pretty open in what you do. But if you don't have it, it's still possible to defeat the final boss. It just takes a lot more strategic thinking. And I ended up developing a simulation tool to help people out, either be myself or others, to just experiment with different combinations of stuff to figure out,
you have like
can I actually...
you could plug in what your gear is and it'll tell you what your chance to kill the jelly at the end is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
You plug in your gear, you plug in your levels, you plug in stat adjustments, and you plug in your spells. You plug in what you're going to do. It doesn't generate an active list of what to do specifically. It does give you the ability to tinker and get yourself a combination and a percentage of completion. And it'll
because I know that
like, oh, yeah, I have a 33% chance to do whatever at the very end.
Ellie's a major math monster. So dude will run calculations while you're sitting in front of the final boss and be like, hey, what you got? Here's the ranges that you could get with these weapons. Like it's almost encyclopedic, his ability to just say, oh, you've got these things, this is your optimal setup, or this is your best chance to get things done. It's actually very impressive.
And like the jelly is relatively deterministic as well, right? You said he always does the same thing every time, so you know how much damage you need to do, and you know what he's going to do every time. So like
he always has 9,980 HP, which is a fairly unusual amount. Why not round it up to 99.99? I don't know. There are enemies in the game with well over 10,000 HP, so why they picked specifically 19 under 4 straight 9s, I don't know. On turn 1, he heals your party's HP. On turn 2, he heals your party's MP. And on turn 3, he just says, all right, come on, bro. Let's see what you got. And he never hurts you. So you can only take the entirety of what are 4 actions per player plus your pet's 4 uncontrollable actions. Or sorry, 3 actions per player plus your pet's 3 uncontrollable actions. And on turn 4 at the start, because the jelly is just so incredibly fast, he's like, well, you had your chance. You blew it. I'm out of here. And he just runs away. Unless you take advantage of one specifically complicated exploit, which is just funny. That makes it so you can outspeed it. And then when you outspeed it, then you get to do one thing and punch him in the face before he says, well, I'm still too good for you, even though you just punched me anyway. And then at the end of it, he says, well, you are powerful, but it doesn't seem like you're the warrior that I thought you were. So come back and try again next time. Funnily enough, though, the way to complete the Ancient Cave and end the battle with the jelly successfully, you'll notice I'm phrasing this a little differently. I'm not saying defeat the jelly. In the speed run, you have to defeat it in order to qualify as a victor. But in the main game, all you have to do, if you want to clear it and say, yeah, I've successfully completed the challenge, is end the battle before the jelly ends the battle. So if you were to off your entire party and get the game over screen to pop up, Well, you ended the battle on your terms and not the jelly's terms. And the jelly says, "What brilliance! Perhaps you are the world's greatest warrior." And then he gives you the reward of the ancient cave, which is a key that gets you into a back room with some goodies.
I
Gives
see.
you an undisplayed item that's a
Awesome.
bragging right trophy. And then you open up your menu to escape out of the cave, and you see 4 party members with 0 HP. Everybody's dead. You're like, okay, what do I do? And you can try to revive yourself, or you can just escape the cave and auto revives you anyway. But it's
Like-
funny that this is a feature of the game, and it's not an exploit. It's not a glitch. It was a feature.
It's a feature.
Yeah,
Programmed in by the developers.
you've knocked
allow
me
you
down,
to-
making me the winner.
Yeah, basically what they did was they were programming it and they figured out, oh, whoop, wait, is this supposed to be allowed? And the devs were like, leave it in. This is another way they can do it.
Okay, because like I know like this, I've heard of this before in some other games where like the game just assumes if a battle ends outside of the boss ending it that you must have won the fight. So if you like party wipe or do something specific to end the battle, like a good example that I know is like running away from the ghost in like Pokemon Red. If you use a Pokédoll because you're not supposed to be able to actually run, the game assumes you must have cleared how you're supposed to do it because you couldn't have gotten away from that fight without that ability. But if you must have run away, then clearly you must have already had the Silph Scope, so you can skip the Silph Scope in Pokemon Red. This is like something that they found. It's like whatever, leave it in. If they do it, that's fine too. Close enough. That's really interesting though. So how obviously Ancient Cave is randomized. You're seeing different items. How do you get good at something like this? What are the steps that it takes to sit at this very random game like this? Practice and play, and what are you looking for? How do you improve? Is it just like a knowledge check? Is it you got to have Ellie's calculator on the side to plug in all your numbers to know? All right, this floor I've got a 10% chance of getting this item on this chest, or I want to avoid the Dragon Cons, over there in the corner. What's the actual
so this is a how do I get good? So to speak.
Yeah. Like obviously,
yeah. Just step 1, be Ellison.
The other question would be, how long does it take? As in, I think I'd be very interested to know, say for example, if I was to sit down and play it, having never played the game before, right? How long would it take to get good? If you pardon the phrase, and get through the cave. Obviously, you wouldn't do it on the first attempt, but how long roughly do you think it would take? Or is that dependent on resources? Is that dependent on having Ellison in your chat helping you out, or what else?
So there's 2 big things about the Ancient Cave. One is that is the mode accessible through the main game, and playing the DLC is really a recommended tool in my opinion because it lets you know what spells do, because the names may not be what you'd think they would be, or what certain characters can equip, or what certain enemies are weak to as far as elements go, or what IP abilities exist where. The North American release of the game is bugged in a way that certain equipment won't even load into the game once you hit floor 10 until you complete the rest of the cave and escape and go back into it, because only 1 through 9 spawn accessories outside of a very select few that are in a unique blue chest system, which I'll explain later. So there are resources out there that can let you know what equipment does, but if you play through the main game, you'll know that, say, the red saber is actually a fire elemental sword, and you see plants and stuff. You think, oh yeah, I'll go beat them up. But maybe if I equip a fire sword, it'll be a cool thing. But if you play the main game, you have to play the main game in New Game Plus mode in order to even get there by accessing Ancient Cave mode as a whole. And by then you've toyed with the spells. By then you've explored a little bit. You understand how enemies, to some capacity, move around, how you move. Normally the main game will also give you an arrow which will allow you to shoot and stun enemies across the screen. The Ancient Cave takes that away from you. Even if you hack it in, it doesn't work. So one great resource to just being better at the game is playing the DLC and familiarizing yourself with just how the game structure works. But if you're like Altair and say, screw that, I came to play the cave, well, then there are resources out there, and it helps you study. And we have a couple of study guides built by a user named Real Critical, who just collect compository information of everything you can find in the Ancient Cave, where you can locate it, what the things do, and how enemies behave. And if you recall earlier, I described enemies moving when you do. The puzzle, as it were, involves you trying to get in combat with a very specific handful of enemies, like I mentioned the cores earlier, and avoiding pretty much everything else, because about 2/3 of the way through the game, or through the cave, everything will kill you. Everything has the potential to kill you except for maybe 2 or 3 things. And defeating them strategically is a great time save and also a survivability tool, because you don't have access to the game's features of recovery as much as you may have in the main game. So there's heal pads where you can stamp on them and it refills your HP to full, but there's a very limited amount of MP resources, and there's no MP recovery tiles in the Ancient Cave. So your MP, which is the best way to recover, the most efficient way to recover health and revive, is just not as applicable and available to you. So you have to be very stingy with your resources.
You keep in mind that assumes that you pick those up, because when you enter the Ancient Cave, you walk in with 10 potions to your name at level 1, and good luck. So you won't have access to your healing spells. You won't have access to any MP recovery items. You have to go and find those. You have to take the time and explore as safely as possible to pick those items up before you reach a point in which they become essential to survival.
Okay, so basically you kind of have to go early and get your stuff, and that invests into a later, decision tree as you kind of move through.
Yeah, to a degree.
Speed running, and then you want to open as little as possible, and ideally find stuff that doesn't really involve recovery, because hopefully you just won't get into the combat. But for the average run, you're going to get punched in the face by ninjas, or you're going to get walled by gorems. I'm sorry.
God, there you.
It's for a couple of typos in enemy names, like Hydoras instead of Hydra.
Assassins.
A little phonetic. Assassins is well scripted game. The game itself really is well scripted, well coded as far as just general gameplay and functionality goes. Just some enemy translation errors that make things a little buggy. But
it's a product of its
available
time.
resources matter a lot, and there are a couple of tools that can really help. GameFAQs has enough up and available that lets you know what will do what. But if you jump into our Discord, we can just give you the more accurate, the more detailed, the more summarized, the more simplified versions of the databases that you would need. Either that or just bash your head against the wall and run into it until you feel like you understand it. Like most roguelikes, you try it enough, you'll get to floor 10 this time, then floor 12 this time, then floor 2 this time, then floor 19 this time, then floor 34 this time. Each time you try it, you get a little bit better. And once you get to the end, you don't even know really that your tools are so limited and that you have to defeat an enemy with HP that you don't know. But you are told by an NPC in one of the towns that you only have 3 turns to do it. So you do go in with a very, very, very preliminary knowledge of the fact that once you get to the bottom floor, you have a limited amount of time or turns to defeat the final boss. And that's why I like to be present, because players don't necessarily know that, especially if they're doing it for the first time. And a little tool or simulation or calculator can really help make your day a little easier and save you the feeling of failure after you spent 19 hours trying to get to the bottom of this cave after 30 tries over a month.
After your SNES was on for about 6 days.
Your cartridge is running hot and you're burning
you burned a hole through the floor.
A question regarding the randomness here. You were talking about obviously that it is roguelike, it's randomly generated. That obviously means that each attempt isn't necessarily going to be obviously the same, but how much does that vary in terms of difficulty? As in, can you just get incredibly unlucky with the drops or the treasure or the monsters or whatever, and it makes it a lot harder, or is it tend to even out over a number of attempts? Is that a difficult question?
So the game doesn't offer seeding as far as information goes, even though we have built a seeding tool that allows you to. But the game itself, every 3 floors or so, enemy layout, or every multiple of 3 floors, enemy layouts and combinations change per floor. So you know what the enemy combinations can be within a particular range. So it's more deterministic roguelike. Chest contents, items, potions, magic recovery, antidotes, and things with your status ailments, and magic spells. Any one of them can be found on any floor. And once you've found a spell and it's added to your spell pool, all of your characters get access to it, which normally during the main campaign, only one character, you have to buy it and you assign it per character per spell. In this one, you find a spell like, say Blizzard. All 4 characters in your party that can use it will acquire it, and then it's added to the pool for the rest of the run. Potions, antidotes, that stuff can appear anywhere. Weapons, that stuff can appear anywhere, armor too, but progressively as you play through the game, any red chests that you find will have item pools worth of weaponry and armor that will continuously grow as you get deeper. So by floor 15, you can finally begin finding the elusive Decker Blade, which is what was considered to be the most important item in completing the run. Once you hit floor 60, the chest pool is loaded to completion, and then you have the entirety of everything, weaponry, armor, whatnot, accessible. There are also blue chests, which if you open up one of them and you discover the contents, those are traditionally very, very, very powerful items. And while you don't have the ability to take stuff into the cave except for 10 potions and a burlap sack covering your hair, your red hair, the blue chest items, if you escape the cave without dying, you can take those back in with you, making subsequent adventures a little easier.
Yeah,
so
there is an item that lets you do that.
Yes, once you hit floor 20, there's an item called the Providence. When you use that, it allows you to escape the cave and take anything in a blue chest or with the name Iris attached to it out of it. And you can re-enter and take them with you, which is a great way to practice the cave as well. So in the campaign, you can farm a couple of enemies that drop some of those things outside and then bring them into the cave, or in the DLC or in the Ancient Cave mode itself, you can go through, get to floor 30, find a couple of blue chest goodies, exit, save, and then go back in with your super cool armor and a couple other things. And that you had mentioned earlier, how do I practice? That's in my opinion, the recommended way to practice. Go through the cave bit by bit. When you feel like you're in trouble, bop out, take what you have. And if you enter the cave with those blue chest goodies and die, you don't lose those. You only lose what you find in the run that you had just done.
So you kind of get to like almost upgrade once you find those things and kind of get yourself like stronger to make it easier to clear. Are those allowed generally for the speedrun, or generally at the speedrun are you not allowed to use the Iris items?
Well, the Iris items are a complete waste of space, so those don't necessarily count. They are undroppable garbage that you cannot even feed to your pet. Unfortunately, all they do is take up a slot of inventory in 4.5 seconds of your life.
No, that's not true. They can take up to 20 if you decide to do the Iris percent speedrun category for the game. Good luck. I hope aren't working. I hope you've retired so that you can do that in one shot. But
world record of that is roughly 8 hours that Yagamoth recently got. But we have runners that will do it. I've seen people do 72-hour straight streams, and they were not able to discover all 9 Iris items. And it was,
are they that rare?
Thing.
It's a
they are extremely rare.
You have a percentage chance of finding them in any given red chest, and that percentage chance drops with every item that you find. So in a game where your chests are already randomized, these are a small chance within those pools and then a small chance within their own pool separate to get them. And then you have to beat the jelly to get one of them.
Mm-hmm. Only up to 8 chests will spawn on a floor. If they're red chests, they will contain it, but if they're blue, they will not. They, I believe, only can appear in the first chest loaded on a particular floor, so there really is just that much smaller of a chance you get it. It loads in what would be considered the upper left chest on a particular floor, so there is a way to kind of minimize your time wasting to try to locate them. But if you open that chest and you see there's nothing there, then you just gotta move on. And sometimes you load in the floors that don't even have a chest. So
oh gosh.
Yep.
I mean, they may have no enemies, which is great for time saving, but it's just you never know what you're gonna find.
Huh. So you can just like completely vary on that. How much do like levels matter then? Like, obviously when y'all go fast, you say like the later floors are very dangerous. Are they less dangerous casually because you'd be like double your level if you're like just actually killing stuff and not just looking for cores, or is that just a feature of the game that once you get past level 65, you just never want to fight anything ever, even casually?
So early on, from floors 9 to 11, you'll find their first instance of a core enemy, and they are called red cores. And they're just like the metal slimes from Dragon Quest, where they have a high chance to run away. They're very defensive. Caveat, asterisk on that defensive feature, by the way. If you defeat them, you get an obscene amount of EXP for the time in which you find them. And there are 4 total instances of cores that you'll locate over the course of your run. If you were to start the game at base level 1, like you normally do, and you dive and you speedrun to the red core floor and you defeat a red core, it bumps you up immediately to level 9. Speedruns will finish the cave at roughly level 30. So you can see the importance of 1 red core jump starting your run by such a significant amount. But there are enemies along the way that say, well, we don't care if you're level 9 or 19 or 39. We'll just bop you and outspeed you and one-shot your team. And you can just suck it up and deal with it. So ideally, you're fighting the cores because they're very safe forms of EXP. They give you a lot of it. There is, I guess you'd call it overflow, where their magic defense is so high that it's low, and they die to any offensive spell. So when I mentioned they're like metal slimes, where they just don't die because they're so tough to hit, and if they do stick around to get hit, they just run away. In this game, you can just toss any magic spell at them, and they just fail to exist immediately.
I'm going to caveat that their defenses are not so high that you can't one-shot them with a good weapon, or two-shot them, but they're definitely less painful to kill than an actual metal slime. So even if you go in without a spell, you're still going to hunt down those cores, because even your basic attacks, even ignoring crits, which would pierce through defense anyways, will still take these things out. They're still the safest option. But I guess, are you asking more for a speed run setting, or a casual, I want to clear the cave, doesn't really matter how long it takes kind of setting?
Just a little bit of both. I mean, a lot of this stuff is kind of interesting just to like kind of think about, because obviously when you're going fast, you have a different mindset. You even imagine like you listen to when Elmagus and Datzer, Zach, and all of them have done marathon runs in the past, and I've listened to them. They play for a marathon setting very differently than how they would play, casually, or not even casually, but like when they're going for a faster time. Because obviously in a marathon, it's a lot more important that you get those levels and get those items and can get at least to the jelly, even if you can't actually get a kill on the jelly, right? So I'm just curious, like, is there like another level even beyond what that, where it's like this is like a super safe thing and like everything is fair game now all of a sudden, or is that like? I'm just kind of curious to hear kind of differences, I guess.
Just to add to that quickly as well, the speedrun tactics for this, how would a standard sort of speedrun look for Ancient Cave? Obviously, as Gould was saying, there's obviously many different ways you can play it, and there's all the randomness involved. But is there a set sort of approach for a speedrun? Is that obviously there's certain items you're looking for, certain things you're looking to do? Obviously, the cores are important for that, but how does that sort of what does a standard sort of speedrun look like?
So you'll start the game, and from floors 3 to 9 you can find accessories, notably elemental rings, which increase the damage dealt by your elemental corresponding spells. So like an ice ring, a thunder ring, they would increase the damage output by those particular spell types. Magic damage in this game takes a lot less value from your intelligence stat and much more of the base power of the spell. So multiplying the base power of the spell is a big deal, even though it's a 50% increase. 50% increase on a spell that normally does 300 plus maybe 20 or 30 for your intelligence stat, bumping it up to say 450 or so. You can see where the weight of that carries through. So those first 9 floors, if you're going to take a gamble at getting one of those rings at all, you'll open to grab a couple of basic weapons, maybe a quick spell or two, so that way you can bop a core really quickly. And then you'll hopefully find one of those rings that make your day easier. Once you hit floor 10, you stop opening for a while. And then you get to floor 11 through 13, you explore for cores. Then you get to floor 15, and you start opening again because your Decker Blade can begin appearing in the loadout. And you open for a little while until you feel as though you're comfortable. Speedrunning will take you anywhere between opening from 15 to 25 to 15 to 45. The first real wall gatekeeper of the run appears at floor 44, those being ninjas, which will move towards you at twice the speed that you move across the map. And they pretty much will be guaranteed to outspeed you in combat. They can AoE your party with an incredibly high attack, or they can go multiple times per turn. They come in pairs, sometimes in groups of 3, and they are just extremely difficult to beat, especially with the ability to just one-hit kill your tanky members. So normally when people are running the game, unless they're going for a pure unadulterated speed-based speedrun, you're kind of preparing to deal with the fact that you might encounter ninjas. So you're looking for a few healing spells, you're looking for a couple of revival items, and you're looking for all those basically between the floors of 15 and 30, maybe 15, 35. What do you think, Altair? Does that sound about right? Anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I guess from a casual perspective, the big difference in run setup is that if you're playing casually, you're probably opening everything. And
Okay.
if it's safe to do so, you're going to be killing everything for that EXP. Because there's no reason not to. If you're not under a time constraint, you know,
Right.
unless there's an enemy that you're really afraid of and are not prepared to fight because you just haven't had good luck, you're just going to grab everything. And law of averages is going to get you a good handful of spells. When you pull spells out of the pool, you're going to, you know, get the ones that you need eventually. So it becomes a safer prospect. The big difference is in those blue chest items that you pull out that are just better than a lot of the stuff you're going to get in a red chest, so that you can more safely go through the beginning floors and get all those early chests.
Okay.
For the speedrun, it was a lot like Ellison is saying. There are certain choke points in a run, and your progression through the cave is in preparation for those specific choke points. When you're going through and getting the cores, you know when you're getting there. You want to open early chests, not just for the rings, but to try and get a strong weapon or an attack spell that will let you clear those cores. And once you've got a spell, you're pretty much set to clear cores the entire game. You don't have to go through that step again. And so you just check it off your list. You said, hey, I've acquired this. I could look for more if I want some security, or if I've been blazing through floors and it's a good time to do so before more things get added to the chest pool. Or you just continue on. You say, hey, I could probably risk going through this choke point now. I've got a couple of spells. I've got there's a type of weapon called a deadly weapon, or a classification called a deadly weapon, which, if you know RPGs, you know that things like death spells are not normally particularly good unless they're a specific classification, like level 4 death in a Final Fantasy game, right? If you know an enemy's a multiple of 4, that becomes effective, but it's very situational. The 3 main deadly weapons that you would use in an Ancient Cave run have an 80% instant death chance.
Really
So
that high? I thought it was 18, not 80.
yeah, it's 80%. 20% of the time it works 80% of the time. But it is you're gonna have a moment where you're screaming at Artie for missing a deadly rod, but generally speaking, they're more effective than not, and they come with their own caveats. If you equip them, you can't unequip them without a certain item called a curse lifter. But if you're equipping it to, say, your mage character, who's probably not physically hitting things anyways, it's generally a safe bet. And if you're in a position where you're about to run into, say, a ninja, and you've got only a deadly weapon as a tool to get through them, you've got to make the choice of, do I know the enemies in the room, and are they there enough that I can puzzle out the ninja movement? Because you can block them. You can make enemies move in their path and get past them. And that's a knowledge check. That's, do I know my enemy movement? Can I pace my steps correctly? Or do you recognize that that's not possible, and you have to see if you've got a combination of IP abilities or deadly weapons or attack items that you've picked up in those chests? Have you prepared enough or gotten lucky enough to handle those with a more brute force method? So that's where you stop becoming about, what do I prepare from the ground, and it's the knowledge that you acquire from going through a run. And you'll get more used to that as you play through the game. You've got to give it some practice to know, hey, I know this enemy moves this way. I can manipulate them. You know, you will acquire that skill, and that's where playing through the DLC helps with some of those formations. But some of it is just seeing the unique formations in those 3 floor sets that Ellison was talking about, and knowing, okay, 44 to 46, there's ninjas that I want to avoid, but there's also these enemies, and if I see them, I could probably get around a ninja. Or if there's a chest there, I see that chest, and there's an enemy adjacent, I could get the ninja stuck trying to move, because they'll move in a straight line towards you, the most direct path. If something is directly in their way, they'll like bump into it, and so you can get around them. It's those things that you are really trying to learn, more so than the information on the sheet. And you will you learn that across every set of important floors in a run.
Right, just gonna get better over
Altair makes a
time.
great point there. So if you're playing through casually, you're probably opening everything. You're probably killing everything, unless for some reason you choose not to or you decide not to. In the speed run, you're going to be around level 20 or so, which is sort of dangerous if they decide to use their AoE. But if they punch you in the face twice each, then it's not as scary of a thing. But in a general any percent pile of I'm just going to clear everything because I just want to get any kind of clear possible, you're probably going to be almost twice that level by the time you finally get there because you've bought everything along the way. You have a lot more armor at your disposal. So you may not realize just how threatening they are on a first run or a second run if you don't encounter too many of them or if they behave rather nicely to you. But you can suddenly be really caught off guard by I see a lot of people who are streaming who are just playing it for the first time and they're looking at chat and they're messing around with the YouTube video or something, and all of a sudden they look back at their screen and they're fighting ninjas and 2 of their characters are dead. And they're like, what? I haven't had anyone die since I started this, or this is done. Oh, okay, I guess I just keep trying to win. And they don't know or they don't realize that you can flip your party members to the back row to make them take less melee damage, kind of like in Final Fantasy games or the back row, front row style of damage for both you and the enemy. Little tools like that, but they'll just try to brute force their way through because I haven't had to run away yet. Maybe I just missed something silly, and
I'm feeling called out.
Punch them in the face, and then they end up gaming over, and they're like, "Wait, what just happened?" Because they didn't quite fully understand what went wrong. So they go in there and they try again, like, "Oh yeah, I remember seeing these guys, but they were level 38 at the time. This time they're level 41. They have 2 blue chest armors, and they don't realize how." Suddenly the character's taking 110 damage. Now they're taking 15 damage. So they're like, "Oh, okay, I must have underestimated how tough they are." In a casual run, like that's what I encourage. I want people to explore and get themselves hit by people and destroyed, and so that way they learn. Okay, yeah.
So what you're saying is you want people to suffer a little bit.
Well, it's important to understand that in the Ancient Cave, like Altair had mentioned too, with deadly weapons, some enemies have so much HP as you progress through the cave, especially in the 80s and 90s, that it really just does not work to just mindlessly hit things with a stick until they collapse. That stick has to be magical and have an instant kill property attached, otherwise it's not going to work. So to put this in context, your general hits deal without elemental advantage maybe 200-300 points of damage. If you have an elemental advantage, 500 or 600 per hit, maybe. That's from your stronger characters, and then your spells are going to deal a little bit less, and some of these don't even have spell weaknesses in the late cave. Enemies with 2400 or so HP that can attack up to 8 times per turn for 100 to 200 each. Your party members, some of them will only have 300 HP, and enemies that can attack up to 8 times come in pairs. So if you just mindlessly try to beat things up, and then all of a sudden you find these 8-headed beasts that hit you for maybe 1600 damage times 2, and you're just saying, "Oh, well, I'll just hit them," even if you're going at it with elemental advantage. You're still maybe 2 rounding each one. So eventually there does come a point where someone who's just brute forcing their way through the game, unless they've gotten lucky with some blue chest armors and things, are probably just going to die, and they're not going to understand what went wrong. And sometimes that can discourage people from jumping because they're like, "Well, I don't even understand what killed me. I don't understand what I did. There's no in-game resources that tell me what I could have done wrong, no bestiary or anything. So I'll try again. Maybe I'll watch out for this thing there," or maybe they give up. But those deadly weapons make it so that way you can approach combat very differently. Because if you equip them to your fast people, they can outturn these enemies that just one-rounded you, that you can't even 2-round back. And suddenly you start to feel empowered and say, "Oh, gee, yeah, now I can make it. Now I can really deal with these things." But then you get to that Dragon Con and you're fighting these pairs of silver dragons and gold dragons that, I fought these goofy looking copper ones earlier. All they did was punch me one time and cast mirror on themselves. Well, what do I care? They're casting reflect spells. And you find the silver ones, like, how much worse can these guys be? And they all have the same HP and the same agility, but suddenly the silver dragons go twice per turn, and they have an AoE, a nasty AoE that hits your entire party for like 200 minimum. And again, I mentioned your party, even in a run where you're defeating everything along the way, probably has maybe your weakest people will have around 400 or 450 HP. Your strongers will have like 600, and they're still taking 150 to 200 damage per turn from these AoEs that they can double, triple up on. And well, I made a mistake. They're spamming their super abilities, and you fight the gold ones that have 3 actions per turn, and they have 2 different AoEs that slaughter your party. So eventually, like I said, and like Altair was saying, depending on how you go through, you're going to eventually learn that you can't just mindlessly punch your way through. A deadly weapon helps, a cursed weapon really helps, but you're never truly safe. And that's where resources come into play, or experience. You can keep your own pen and paper pad, like, if you're going through some type of Etrian Odyssey style of game where you take notes and you say, okay, the gold ones, don't touch them. Those big.
And once you get Stardust blowed 3 times in a row by a gold dragon, you never forget that they can kill you. Like, you don't lose that knowledge.
I've seen people do 100% Ancient Cave runs where they're level 75. And they found a pair of gold dragons on floor 98 right at the end.
Oh.
And they got Stardust blown 3 times in a row, and the only person that survived was their tank, who was too slow to outturn them on the following turn. So you can't run away unless you outspeed the enemies using a complicated formula that basically randomly rolls weighted towards your fastest person that's alive, your chance to run away. Well, if your slowest person is outsped by both enemies, well, then all they have to do is get bopped 3 more times in the face. And you're done, because they outsped your 80% missers, and there goes your run. So these people defeated everything. They're level 75 and they're done. I don't understand what went wrong. And that's the true allure of the cave, is that in a roguelike, you often feel like, okay, I'm ready, I'm done, I'm prepared, nothing can kill me unless I play really, really poorly. And in the Ancient Cave, that's kind of the same thing, but sometimes luck will just be on your side, where your tools don't work for you the way that you think they're going to, and therefore you've got a run that just isn't the run that you thought it was, and you got to start over.
I was just going to say that it would be pretty, quite demoralizing to make your way that far through the dungeon and then get zapped by something. I mean, for example, getting 40 odd levels in and you're zooming along, and then all of a sudden a ninja comes out of nowhere and kills you.
All right, here's the question. Have either of y'all died on floor 99 before?
99 is jelly floor, so...
Oh, okay. 98.
Yeah.
The lobby is considered floor 0, so to speak, and it's...
okay.
Yeah. But so on died on the final floor, yes. There exists in the combination of room generation layouts a hallway type, which is just 2 tiles tall, and the dragon enemies are 2 tiles wide, and the stairs can be on one end of it, and the dragons may be spawning on top of the stairs, and you're on the other side, and you're in a very tight hallway, and the best you can hope for is a chance to get a back attack on enemies, which is another neat thing about this game, by the way, which we haven't talked about yet. Altair, if you want to go into that in a bit, feel free. But in these tiny hallway floors, which are the absolute worst, getting into combat with these dragons is absolutely forced, and their movement is random. They have a 25% chance to pick a direction every 3 steps and just go in that direction, and maybe they'll just creep towards you slowly, maybe they will walk into walls, and you can get a back attack on them. Sometimes
you've actually challenged dragons.
Yeah, they're walking around with their eyes closed. They spun around with their heads attached to a baseball bat on the ground, like in Sandlot, and then they stood up and they're like, okay, which way do I go now? And they'll creep towards you, and eventually you'll be like, okay, well, they're 1 tile away from me. I need to pick a direction. Do I go up or do I go down? And hopefully they won't turn to face me. And then once you bump into combat with them, if you time it wrong, then when you move the 2 tiles to go past them, they will move again. And hopefully they won't move again and bump into you, because once you collide with enemies on the map, you get into combat with them again. So you could be setting yourself up in a real pickle. And here I am. This is a run I distinctly remember doing on a mobile version of it, where I played it on my phone. I got a Decker Blade, floor 97. Okay, my God, I actually have this run. Hit the stairs, floor 98, immediately. Dragons spawned in such a way that they were contacting me on the stairs, so I had no way to avoid them, because they were right there when I loaded in. Boom, immediate battle. I was facing down. No, sorry, I was facing to the side when I hit the stairs, and they got a surprise attack on me. Just instantly blown away. And
you've mentioned... sorry to interrupt. You've mentioned a few times now, and maybe I've missed it, but you mentioned the Decker Blade, and obviously you've mentioned that is important for the jelly, for the slime at the end. Can you explain exactly why that's so critical, and why do we need that? Can you not kill it without it, or?
So here's the thing. The final boss has a very specific amount of HP, 9,980. I mentioned earlier that your physical hits deal around 2, maybe 300. Your spells deal 300 to 400. You have 3 turns to defeat the boss. And if you do the math based on those numbers I just gave you, even rounding high, 400 times 3 actions times 4 people is not going to equal out to 10,000. It just isn't. So how do you deal with the jelly in its massive HP pool? You find weaponry that deals damage based on the percentage of its HP. And those weapons, El Chico Rafa in chat actually mentioned it. One is fractionals, the other is finishers. Fractional weapons include ones that take the enemy's current HP and divide it by a certain amount. And those are considered melee hits, which when used in the front row deal even more damage. So it's a little bit of a tricky thing, but you can take the Decker Blade, which does half of an enemy's current HP, use the IP ability from the Decker Blade on the front row, and then you deal an additional 1/8 multiplier, apply a little bit of randomness in there, and then boom, you've suddenly, with Decker, dealt over 4,000 damage in a single blow to this thing that has, almost 10,000 HP. And, there's your run right there. That's why it's so important. Over the rest of your actions, you want to combine them to deal your total damage, but you want to use that Decker Blade as early as possible. It's the only weapon that can do that much damage, and it's only accessible to one character. And Altair's wearing the hair of that character because it's just that important to the run. Getting to the jelly is incredibly difficult, but if you want to defeat the jelly, Decker's the one to help make it happen.
Yeah, he's probably like the MVP character of any run that lets you use him. There is a category where you don't use him, which is markedly more difficult to the point where you kind of need a specific item combination. But he's great just because he's high HP, he's high defense, he's got good attack, and he's the only one that can equip this almost linchpin item. Now as Ellison said, it's not integral, but it does make the math a lot easier to be able to just cut half HP. There are other fractional weapons. Myth Blade does a quarter. So does an Uncursed Deadly Sword. Or I think the Uncursed Deadly Sword does 1/6.
Correct.
Old Sword will do 1/6. Uncursed Deadly Rod does 1/8, and you can use it 3 times. Because the amount of Ikari points you might use for an IP attack changes. It's not always all of your points go away. But so even if you don't find the Decker Blade, you might still find yourself with a combination of items that still will do it, right? A combination of percentage attacks, the fractionals, and just high damage or multi-hit attacks, which are your finishers. And then there are things that will boost your attack power. The Trick Spell is an incredibly useful tool that boosts your entire team's attack power evenly. And that's super useful. So there's ways of getting around it, but you're still looking for it. Like as soon as you hit floor 15, that becomes the name of the game. Find the Decker Blade in as few boxes as possible.
Right, and I mean, so the way you guys describe it as well, it sounds like as you go higher from that floor 15, every chest is less and less likely because more items enter that item pool. Is that correct? So if you don't find it early, you're less likely to find it later. Oh, that's always fun.
Yeah, but then you get those fun moments like with Ellison where you get like the floor 97, 98. This is the last chest I have access to. It's the Decker Blade. The run is saved. And then you've got those moments where immediately after you hit double dragons and you get back attacked, and they say, "Hey, thanks for picking up our Decker Blade. You can go now." So. Yeah, I mean and that's part of the game, right? You do a run of Binding of Isaac, you don't get a good attack weapon, and all the enemies start blowing you out of the water, and there's only so much you can do about it, right?
Right.
Unfortunately sometimes that's the nature of roguelike, and I feel like we talk about it kind of as if you get into a bad fight, you're kind of just done. And sometimes that happens. And I think the thing that people might look at it is say, oh, well, the fights are unfair. Why would I play? And the answer is that's the puzzle. It's not how do I navigate the fight? A lot of it is how do I navigate around the fight? And the fight is the last resort. It's your skill is more in the avoidance. Or in, like Ellison said, can you set up an enemy so that you hit them from the side for a 50% chance of sneak attack, or from the back for a guaranteed sneak attack, instead of can I just blaze through and hope I'm lucky? That's the final option. That's the nothing else. Everything else has failed. I have to do this now and hope that it's okay. it's less of a do I have a chance of losing and more do I find that I have a chance of still winning, and that's the way I think you need to look at it.
I'm going to toot my horn here a little bit. I accidentally world recorded the game, the Ancient Cave, and the technique that I did to do so,
Nice.
You could say technique even though it's so heavily luck reliant, is that I decided to grind IP off of a very specific enemy that is normally extremely dangerous and avoided when encountered, because they normally come in pairs. They normally both will dual AoE, and the dual AoEs will take out your casters, and your 2 tanks are just too slow to outspeed them, and they get offed on the following turn. I lucked into an encounter where I was able to defeat one, run away, and because I didn't have revival magic, I was able to IP farm and fill up the IP, so that way I could use one of the armor's revival IP abilities to revive my party back up, and use what I had as far as the weakest healing spell to just barely keep my party's HP topped up enough to recover IP farm. And this was at floor 60. It was Salamander's floor 63, I think it was 62, 63. And I lucked into no dangerous combat for that. That's a technique that I really would recommend nobody ever do. It's like, you're legitimately dancing with the devil. You're under-equipped, you're underarmed, you're under-leveled. You have no idea what to do. But this is one of those things where, again, having knowledge of the game, having played it as much as I have, I was like, okay, this is the combination of stuff I have. This encounter is forced anyway. How can I utilize this to my advantage? Okay, I actually can. And I was able to just accidentally stumble through it and luck out in such a way that I wasn't punished for it horribly. And then after that, everything just worked out like, warm butter on hot bread.
Brag, by the way, I accidentally got the world record. Just casually. I just, playing the game. Doing my thing. It's, oh, whoops! I just dropped my giant world record over here. Let me pick it up.
Yes. So for
I don't
context,
recommend anybody else do it the same way.
The world record, El Magus that had the world record. It was 45 minutes and 53 seconds or something. He had that world record for almost 4 years at the time. My personal best at the time was 1 hour and 4 minutes and a handful of seconds.
Wow.
And my daughter and I were about to go to a skating rink, and I'm like, okay, I have enough time to PB. I have enough time. If I get like a 1 hour, maybe a sub-hour PB, that'll be pretty cool. I can just do a quick offline run. I'll record it while I'm letting her play with her friends or whatever. We gotta leave at a certain time. And I'm doing this run. I've recorded offline. I'm going through, and I deal with my salamanders, and suddenly I realize I'm on floor 92 or something, and my time is just barely over 40 minutes. I'm like, wait, what? What's going on here? So I just lucked into a series of really good finds early on, and I really didn't want the run to die. So I kept going. The next thing you know, I'm at the jelly, and I'm doing my combination of attacks, and my damage rolls are high, and I'm doing some suboptimal actions because I'm thinking, oh my god, can I actually do this? Can I actually get a clear under 1 hour, under 50 minutes? At the time, maybe only 2 other people had runs under 50 minutes. El Magus was one, and then Matt Sparezack was the other one. And next thing you know, I look at the time. I wasn't even really fully aware of what the world record time was at that point, because it was just such a dream off for me. And at this point, all I was doing, I was a simulator. I did the math. I did the coding to simulate the jelly battles. I wasn't known for like super speed. I was just a pretty consistent runner of this. But I just, okay, 45 minutes, 30 something seconds. Let me go check the times really quick and make sure what's going on here. And I looked at the times, and my time's faster than El Magus' time. And it's the war record. No way.
Brilliant.
But I gotta go to the rink. So I uploaded it. I'm in my car in the parking lot. I'm chatting in Discord. I'm like, okay, I uploaded it, but I had an audio problem with the game where I had just previously participated for an RPG Limit Break speedrun race. The first half of the run, the game audio was muted. I caught it around 20 minutes in. I turned the audio on so you could hear the you could hear the game audio, but my microphone wasn't muted. So there was the sound editor people who were very proficient and able to determine splices and stuff were able to look at the video, and they're like, okay, yeah, we can tell this was a legitimate run because we can't find any, evidence of everything, because the audio, there's no evidence of splicing, none of that. They're like, okay, this runs legit. Ever since then, they added a rule to the boards that says, okay, full audio is required. So my run's great to play in the background if you don't want sound for the first 20 minutes. But it's a whirlwind storm.
Does the double humble brag? Not only did he accidentally get world record, he also accidentally created a new rule because he got the world record.
Yeah, if it was just like on a 10th place run, whatever, nobody would care.
Problem.
Oh, jeez. So, we've talked a lot about like kind of the base way to play, which is obviously putting the game in and having this like double DLC beat mode with gift mode where you can take whatever party members in. There's a lot of ways to do Ancient Cave. I know that like because it's a SNES game, obviously there's a fully manipulated category as well where you manipulate everything, and I believe that's like a 20-minute run almost, right? That's a totally different category, different thing you can do. And then there's also ROM hacks. I think my favorite, like you have, just in case your random roguelike isn't random enough, there's a randomizer for the randomizer. And then there's also the opposite, where there's like, I guess probably the better way, it's a way of seeding the game like you would have for, a more modern randomizer. So you could have like a race where two people are playing the same seed. Do you want to talk about like, either the development of those? Why did someone decide to make the randomizer for the randomizer when the randomizer already existed? Have you dabbled with these? Are they pretty fun to mess with as, Ancient Cave enthusiasts? Let's talk about those some.
So a couple of years ago, there's this guy named Abyss, or Abyssanim, who put out something called the Terror Wave Randomizer. And that just randomizes, or allows you to randomize your player growths and base stats, what spells can be equipped by what people, what equipment can be assigned to each person, what your capsule monster, your pets can evolve into as they, as you feed them and they evolve like Pokemon do. And it just turns it into a truly tremendously terrifying experience when you also apply that to the enemies. And suddenly the jellies on floor 1 have from 8 base HP to 63 base HP. You're butt naked. Their movement is now teleportation instead of just random steps. And it's horrifying. And then other times when ninjas are notorious for chasing after you, they're running away from you like cores do, terrified. And their in combat math, the in combat behavior is the same. It's unaltered. But on the overworld portion, you don't know what they're going to do. Some will teleport and run away. Some will teleport when you're close. Some will double step towards you. So it can be very bizarre going through a randomized experience. And honestly, unless you're super familiar with the cave and you feel like pushing your randomization variable up to maybe from very easy to easy, anything higher than that's going to absolutely destroy you in the first quarter of the run, which is always funny.
Great drinking game.
Yeah, how quickly can I die by playing intelligently? How quickly will the game end me? And,
how optimal is suboptimal?
And then there's a de-randomizer put out by Real Critical, which kind of piggybacks off of the randomizer engine and is a seed tool that allows you to fully build a run, which is pretty exciting, pretty effective. We've had tournaments utilize the de-randomizer to the point where you could predict what the floors are going to be. And in this case, everybody who watches a run's like, I want to see them get to the jelly. I want to see them get the kill. I want to see them find the good stuff, because even if they get there, but they don't find a Decker Blade or anything, I mean, that's a big letdown. So you arguably hope that you're going to find all the good stuff. And yeah, the de-rando is so fun. It really is. You can just generate your own seed, hand it to your friends, and run it with your pals on a Saturday night. You won't know what's in it till you do it. We don't have a changelog that spits out what you see, but it is just a great tool to add fun little replayability with your buddies. And then the last thing, there's a Real Critical as well. He's pretty much our pioneer in terms of like specified ROM hack builds. He built in, if you've played the game before, the world's most difficult trick, which, if you're familiar with the Schlotsky puzzle or Sotsky puzzles or something, those little sliding block puzzles where you have to get the big thing to slide out from the top to the bottom by moving all the little blocks around in a certain way. He coded that into the Ancient Cave. So you can pick how many floors you want in your run. You can pick what floor the jelly appears on. You can add that puzzle to floor 50 if you so desire. There's just a bunch of little silly quirks that have been added in. There's one that reduces or removes gold and repurposes it, so that way you can use it as like a kill counter. So you can see like how many enemies did I defeat along the way. It's a bunch of little things. And Real Critical has pioneered a lot of those. I would really suggest, if you want to, join the Ancient Cave Discord, just seeing what there's offered. We don't stream those too often. There's a couple people that do fairly often. One guy's name is Voodoofs that Altair had mentioned earlier. He is notorious for streaming quirky, silly runs where he'll like turn off the overworld sprites and just see what he bumps into around Halloween. Be like, ooh, we're spooky ghosts, we're invisible. And just other silly little things. And
that invisible run gave me so much anxiety. You straight up can't see any enemies. What are you gonna do?
Oh, gosh. So real quick, if anybody in chat has any questions, we're probably going to wrap up our Ancient Cave discussion in a little bit here. So if you have any questions, get those in the chat. We'll kind of keep an eye on those and get those in. I guess kind of the last thing is, again, we have that event coming up in early January. Ellie, do you want to talk a little bit like what the event is on the channel and what to kind of keep an eye on for it?
Oh yeah, so in January 6th and 13th, which are the first 2 Saturdays of the month, there will be reason to change the name from January to Jamuary with an M instead, and that's because the event Jelly Jam 2024 will be occurring. And that event, so our community puts on 2 annual events. One is called Fatal Blowout, and that's traditionally a more stereotypical race to the bottom. Maybe grab a couple of accomplishments along the way, maybe kill a certain enemy or find a certain item or whatever, and you get a couple of points for that. But the real meat of that run comes from getting there quick and beating off the jelly as quickly as you can. The Jelly Jam event that I put on is a different event where it features and showcases more interesting gameplay and challenges, and a team-based factor where people will enter as pairs. Teams of 2, and they'll go against other teams of 2 in order to facilitate a successful jelly kill, but also complete a few challenges along the way, like discovering certain items or making it so only one person on the team can equip a deadly weapon at a time, or each person can only use such and such elemental spells. Like, okay, say Altair and I are running as a combo as team A. Maybe Altair says, okay, I'm going to use the thunder and the fire spells, and then that will leave me with the ice and the water spells or something. There's a little combination of that, or like we'll pick different party compositions. He'll use this person, he'll use that person. So Jelly Jam features a lot of variety in types of gameplay. So where in Fatal Blowout, you'll see pretty much everyone picking the same party composition, unless there's a reason to specifically not pick that party comp. Jelly Jam features diversity, variety in gameplay, and shows off just what else the cave has to offer in terms of just more than a straight dive to the bottom with a jelly bop in between. The runs itself, and this is going to be, there will be 2 groups of 2 racing, so there's going to be 2 runs each day. So in total, that means there's going to be, roughly, say about 2 hours each run we're going to have, and then it'll be, they'll be back to back. So book 4 to 4.5 hours for each day if you'd like to be present, and they'll be starting at noon EST. So that way you can say, oh, yeah, I'll have lunch while watching some Ancient Cave stuff go on. And we'll have trackers built up so that way people who are unsure of exactly what's going on can type a scorecard command in the chat, and we'll be sure to explain with commentary, and they can see on the scorecard exactly who's got what points and why and what they've had to do to earn them. So it's an interesting way to see the game played. It's kind of like a bingo card sort of accomplishment where people are trying to score points via bingo things, and then also score points by finishing the run in a timely manner. And you have 2 hours to get to the bottom. Not 2 hours to complete the run, but 2 hours to get to the bottom. Once you get to the run, take your time, feed up your pet, shuffle your equipment, wait for your buddy. You want to finish in style, and then give yourself the opportunity for the kill. Because once you've gotten to the jelly, the final floor itself only takes maybe 2 minutes, because the battle itself is pretty quick. You know what you're going to do once you get there. There's no more puzzles to solve except for what do I do in this one last battle. It's our 4th run of the event. It typically has a little bit weaker turnout than Fatal Blowout, but that's because not everybody jumps into this thinking, oh yeah, let me look at the weird ways to play this game. Let me look at the obscure things that, why would I ever fight this enemy? Or why would I ever sit around and watch this happen? Well, sometimes as an Ancient Cave runner, you have to deal with it. So why not showcase what you have to do when you have the odds stacked against you and a couple of weird challenges to overcome? Turn that into an event, and now I got people asking me, hey, when are the signups coming for this? It's almost January. So when people are bugging me for signups for an event, that means to me that the runners want to do it, and I'm going to put it out as long as people want to do it.
That's absolutely brilliant. Can I just say, though, that I absolutely love the name. I mean, Jelly Jam is probably one of the best names for an event. That's so appropriate. It's absolutely brilliant. Amazing, and also amazing to see the community participation with these events. It's and how can anybody get involved? I know you mentioned you say sign-ups are open for it. If anybody is interested in doing that, how would they go about doing so?
So, I mean, contacting me or contacting someone into the Ancient Cave Discord. Do you mind if I plug it in the chat, by the way?
Oh, absolutely. Go right ahead.
All right. So, yeah, the Ancient Cave Discord itself is fairly open, fairly uneventful. Not a whole lot goes on in here, but I mean, if you want to join the Ancient Cave Discord, there's a link to it. We have plenty of resources in here, including ones that can get you straight into the Ancient Cave without having to play through the main game. The DLC, who am I kidding? And the couple of other channels we have are events and whatnot. We've participated for groups like the RPG Valkyries, where we've done a variety of runs before. We post our ROM hacks up there, and we have a Jelly Jam channel specifically dedicated towards it that you can track and see what the events are going on in there. I just posted signups for that yesterday, and I'm more than happy to include anyone who wants to sign up as a team of 2. And if they want to struggle through it and give the audience a good show while doing so, well, feel free. Bring it. S1X Plus, bring it, Chico Rafa.
I'm still debating if I'm going to sign up too, but I definitely want to emphasize just how accessible the speedrun is. Even if you never, again, I came from not even knowing what this game was to jumping right into the speedrun, and now I'm 32 out of like the 100 some runs. Like I'm working on my sub 1 hour time. It hasn't been that long. It's totally doable. It's very, very beginner friendly, and so are the events. No one is going to be dismissive or say, this person's not doing so great. If you come to an event and you mess up, what you're going to get is people saying, hey, good job, I'm glad you're, enjoying it. Here's some things that we noticed that might help you out if you want it. And, it's up to you, but the encouragement is on improvement, not on success.
Yeah.
So you don't have to feel like if you want your first exposure to the game to be participating in the Jelly Jam and figuring it out from there, do it. Have fun. These events are not, there's no trophy, there's no $10,000 grand prize. We come together to look at the goofy things that happen when people play a run. We had experienced runners who we were laughing ourselves silly during commentary because the things that were happening to them were so ridiculous. It didn't matter that they were experienced. If they were beginner, it would have been fun either way. And that's the equalizing factor for a lot of things. So definitely click that link if you've even got a passing interest in a roguelike RPG or just Lufia, or just want to talk with some cool people that are here. Just do it. It's so inviting.
To put a little bit more into context too, Altair mentioned that he is 32 on the leaderboard or something close to there. He is 32 with a 1 hour 8 timer. We have 93 people who have cleared the Ancient Cave in under 2 hours on the speedrun board, and that's not counting duplicate runs that they would have submitted. The 45-minute time that I have and Elmegas has, and only a couple other people have, under 50 minutes. Once you get to a point of 1 hour and 10, it becomes just such a high level of challenge of skill and luck and a combination of the two, where you can get under an hour. Anything between 1 and what we consider marathon safe runs to be 2 hours, anybody with a couple of days, maybe a week's worth of practice, can get a sub 2 hour run. And it just takes a little bit of expertise and comfort. So really, if you do consider joining into the Jelly Jam or any future events that happen here, a 2 hour run, which is how all of our events go, how every one of our submissions to RPG Limit Break have been, how every one of our event submissions to other events will be, 2 hours is a very safe time to be comfortable with. And we've determined that watching dozens of people do dozens and dozens and dozens of runs. So you don't have to feel like, oh man, this is a really daunting game where it's a roguelike. I'm spending hours trying to learn this, but Altair's run is 1 hour and 8, which we consider to be sub RC or sub Real Critical, which is the name I mentioned before as far as our development team goes, which is basically him. Getting anything below that really becomes a testament to skill more than luck, so to speak. And as long as you just know not to bash your head against everything, that you can't beat down every enemy with a stick unless you don't find people to have to beat them down with. You really can just jump into this and say, okay, yeah, I've got 2 hours to blow. I'll see what I can do over this afternoon, stream it, and you'll find people like me or Altair who will jump in and say, oh, hey, yeah, we'll help you out with this. Or you don't want help? Well, fine, we'll just give you some company along the way. I love seeing runners. There aren't too many new streamers that come into this, nonetheless, to participate in our event. So any excuse I can find to support someone who's running, get that kill, come out of it feeling like their time wasn't wasted, and know that, hey, I could do this in under 2 hours. That's fun. Anyone can do it in under 2 hours. Maybe I'll try playing this game and I'll do like a roguelike marathon. I'll explore all these games. Here's one of the oldest ones. And like I said, 2 hours is great. And Altair here has a time barely over 1 hour, which just goes to show how cool that is. It's not that far off the record times that come only to people who've been playing it for years and years and years at this point.
Yeah. Also, I want to add on that like that comes with relatively little technical skill. This is not a game where you need to memorize or muscle memory your way into certain actions that are frame specific. I know for some people speedrunning, that element of that is great, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, like Super Metroid speedrunners with their dexterous fingers and stuff. Yeah, that's a whole different kind of thing.
Right? It's a different kind of performance. And if you maybe don't feel you have that kind of technical skill, it is a little more cerebral. It's a lot more calm because the pace of the game is entirely set by you and your movement. You've got time to think. You're not rushing against an oncoming enemy or a global timer. It's just you. So if you need to sit and think something out or calculate something, you've got time to do it. So you don't have to. There's no. The urgency is entirely in the attempting to get a PB or a speedrun time, like a place time. Other than that, it's a game you take at your pace, and it goes as slow or as fast as is comfortable for you. And that's part of what makes it so nicely accessible. So it just something to keep in mind if things seem daunting because we're talking about 100 floors in an hour. It's at your pace. You know, my runs, I stream my runs. You know, I'm interacting with chat. I'm doing things that are suboptimal and messing up movements. Ellison's caught me goofing so many times on things I had no right to be goofing on because I was interacting with chat. And that's still my time. That was an on-stream time. That was like 7 runs into that stream that day. So you don't have to play perfect. You just got to play enjoyably. And that's enough.
That sounds great. Real quick, because we're kind of running up on time a bit here, but I do want to get this one question in. Do you guys like prioritizing more towards like trying to go really, really fast and like, you know, occasionally just not having the stuff to complete the run? Or is it fun to like go for like big win streaks where, you know, I mean, I cleared it 8 times in a row. I'm so good at this. Do you guys have any preferences on those or what y'all tend to shoot
this
for?
game is a little bit brutal, and games like Slay the Spire or Cobalt Core or FTL, you can set the difficulty sliders to be a little higher, and then sometimes people want to just have chain victories back to back. In Lufia too, there's a couple of hurdles that are just so difficult to push past that doing a sequence of completed runs back to back can sometimes just not happen. There are days that Altair and I stream and the cave just says, you know what? No, this run starts over. This run's done, and they happen far more often than you think. It's really, for me, when I stream, I like to. I'm to the point now where I play with runs with like suboptimal parties or groups, so that way I can just get it under 2 hours and do a couple of interesting things. You know, streaming to the point for me. I highly doubt that I'm gonna get a time above the time that I've gotten while streaming. So I just stream for the fun of it, and I just try to get, you know, kills in interesting ways and teach people what I'm doing, but also do things pretty quickly to show like, hey, look, as long as you know what you're doing, you can stumble through and you can hit all these hurdles. Look here, I'll run into a hurdle to show you how easy it is or how tactfully you can get through if you have the right tools. And that's kind of what I do. So I don't go for repeated examples of quick clear upon quick clear upon quick clear. I go so that way I can say, okay, look, you played this many times, 30% of the time, it's just going to stop right here. 20% of the time, it's going to stop right here. But look, if you have this tool, you can get through this circumstance. If you have that tool, you can get through that circumstance. And encourage people who are watching me, maybe teach them a new technique or two to make their runs a bit more efficient in the future. And also still, like I said, do a run fairly quickly. So like I stream to try and get times around an hour and a half or so, an hour 20 to an hour and 30, because it's just, you can, for an event or for a marathon, that's the time I like to try to finish in. And if I practice on that, then it just goes to show that that can be done consistently. That's good enough for what the audience saw to know is doable on a regular day. If you can get a completed run, that's how quickly you should be able to do it in. I think it can teach people that a lot. Altair may have it differently though.
Yeah.
Real quick, Ellie, Altair, where can people find y'all if we want to watch y'all do some of these ancient cave runs before the Jelly Jam in January?
Well, Altair's Twitch handle is right there in his name that
sort
you
of
see on screen.
Oh yeah, there we go. Yep. Yep. So Magic Couple Gaming. I stream solo sometimes, but my other half, Aria, just questioned whether or not I put on my Decker hat, which I did.
We like the Decker hat.
I do like the Decker. This is my now we're playing the cave kind of hat, right? I put it on if it's feeling a good day or if I'm on a losing streak and I need to feel extra powerful.
I'm Ash Ketchum. I turned my hat backwards.
Yeah, right. I turned my hair blue. But yeah, so but I play the Ancient Cave fairly frequently, usually Wednesdays, but sometimes I just play for funsies. And we stream as a duo, but that's my game. So the way that I try to play normally is I'm hunting for a PB, so I try to play a little quicker, but I also play over the top for the fun of the audience, right? Like we've got our own jokes. Like if there's a certain someone in chat, I'm not getting a Decker Blade till they leave. They always show up right after I get the Decker Blade. They never see it. If I'm running into goofy enemy formations, like I'm there to hunt a PB, but primarily just to have fun running the cave because it's a neat thing to just run with people watching. It's a fun viewer game. It's enjoyable just to see, which I think is why the things like Jelly Jam and Fatal Blowout are so much fun for the community. They're just fun to watch. It's fun to see the silly things that happen in a run and the weird ways that you have to deal with even weirder problems. And
we, as the runners, we have to deal with them. We can just sit there and laugh.
Yeah. Well, I did commentary. I got to laugh at you guys. For Jelly Jam, I'm going to probably be right in the fray of it. So,
all right, and then Ellie, where can people find you?
So my Twitch handle is a little bit different than what you see on screen. If you were to watch me, you would find me at twitch.tv/the_Ellison, so THE_Ellison, because I had this original account, Ellison, and I lost the password. I cannot get Twitch to recover it for me. But I also said, hey, I'd like to reset my name to this. And they said, well, within 90 days, we'll open it. So that way you can do it. And that was 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So I've given up on Twitch support for that. So I'm the Ellison now. And I don't stream as often. I'm a dad to 2, and I have my 13-year-old daughter who lives with me. My son's 22, and he's on his own. But my daughter, I'm very active with her. So I don't get to stream nearly as often as I'd like to, but every now and then you'll see me on the weekend, or I plug an evening away, or around holidays when I don't have a lot of other family stuff going on, or the kids are playing with their friends. I'll stream a little bit and have some fun. In Ancient Cave, you'll find me pretty much any event that is RPG Limit Break based, or RPG Valkyrie based, or roguelike based. I try to make myself present, or at least gather a couple of people so I can do commentary while other people do the race. So you're going to see me at events far more often than you'll see me streaming on my own. Altair, you'll bump into him just having casual runs, and you'll see me in the chat with him, making fun of his movement and helping him do the math at the same time.
Yep, I'm the kind of player that doesn't mind people coming in and getting on my case for the dumb things that I'm doing. But that is very much a rapport that I've made clear is okay. That's not going to be the case for a new runner that just comes in. Don't worry. You come and see people mocking me in chat. That's because I said it's cool and it's fun.
So y'all have been amazing guests. It's been a great discussion. I can't wait to watch the Jelly Jam in January. Real quick, we're going to go to a very, very short break screen. We're going to bring in Gamer. We have a pretty special announcement for Little Break as a channel. Again, thank you all so much for coming on, and we will be right back momentarily.